If I was in charge of the UK economy and I was tasked to grow the UK economy and help small business owners, here would be my election manifesto. In this video, I'm going to break down all the points that I think would seriously help entrepreneurs and business owners, but in turn grow our UK economy. It's real smart, common sense stuff. Let's see what you think. In around 14 days, the UK population is going to be voting for their next Prime Minister. There's some really tough times at the moment. We've got inflation now starting to come under control, but I think we'll start peaking again because shipping containers have gone through the roof, and there's still some economic uncertainty with all the wars that are going on around the world. It's probably the toughest it's ever been being an entrepreneur and business owner since the beginning of COVID. In fact, I put out a post on my Instagram asking if business owners were finding it tougher now than this time last year, and a whopping 80% said yes. Well, why is that? Because I think you've got a government or a status quo that's making it tougher and tougher for businesses to thrive. In fact, they're just about surviving. So how can we get into thriving? What could be the mechanisms the government have got up their sleeve to help entrepreneurs soar to success? Now, here's the thing. Governments are like businesses. They need to be bringing in taxes to pay for those potholes, education, police services, yada, yada, yada. They need cash. Now, they've got an option that they can just keep borrowing more and then taxing us more, or they could be more dynamic. And that's where the entrepreneur comes in. Now, the problem is government have got so many people that need to sign up. They've got their backbench MPs. They've got this massive civil service that have incredible amounts of power. They've got local councils, and then they've got the International Monetary Fund, and then they've got big businesses that are pulling all these levers. So when you're an entrepreneur, you can say, well, I'll choose red or I'll choose black. But when you're a government, there's so much more complexity to the decision-making process. That being said, I do think that we make some silly decisions. No, you can't just reduce his taxes and let everyone have fantasy economics. There needs to be some serious decision making around which levers you pull to drive the economy. Now, in my notebook over here, I wrote down some of the things that I think really hold entrepreneurs back. I actually made a video a few weeks ago talking about the hairdresser, the sole trader hairdresser that starts cutting hair, and they want to grow their business, and they're thinking about opening a shop and employing other hairdressers because everything's going like gangbusters. They are then hit with massive turnover taxes that deter them from actually borrowing money, taking out a shop lease or a commercial mortgage to buy a shop. They don't really get it. We've got business rates, we've got employers' national insurance, a tax on employing people, and all of this red tape and bureaucracy that just stops people from making a decision to take their business to the next level. So that's where I would start. My manifesto pledge number one, if I was in government, would be to reduce turnover taxes and start taxing profit. Because I think when people have made a profit, they're very happy to pay in. What they don't like doing is paying taxes before they've paid themselves. It's a huge disincentivizer to growth. And these turnover taxes have grown in value over the last 15, 20 years that I've been in business. For example, when I started out in business, insurance premium tax, this is a turnover tax that you pay to insure your business or your personal insurance, didn't exist. You didn't have green levy tax. This is a turnover tax that you pay on all your utility bills. You didn't have that. You didn't have VAT as high as 20%. It used to be 17.5%. Then it went to 15%. It's now back up to 20%. You didn't have all these other turnover taxes that are eroding the revenue that a business gets to keep to invest in their business and pay profits. And then when you do, if you finally make some money, you have the highest ever corporation tax that we've ever had. Now, I'm okay with the high corporation tax, but I don't want all these turnover taxes as well. It's just more, disincentivize. And we've got to stop that. The second thing I'd do would be crack down on red tape, especially around planning. Planning is just taking too long, and that really costs our economy, but it doesn't cost the government any money to really drive things through quicker. And I'm not just talking about building over green space. I'm talking about the simple stuff like change of use on buildings that aren't being used. When I started out in business, I had a big commercial warehouse that I converted to a family entertainment centre. So it was going from storage and distribution to leisure. So you have to go to the council and get a change of use on that. Pretty simple stuff. Took 3 to 6 months to do. If I want to do something like that now, I've got to wait 2 years. It just takes too long to get stuff over the line. What does that cost the government? That costs them in taxes, all their bloody turnover taxes. It costs them in all their employee taxes because I'm not trading that business because it's taking me too long to get things over the line. There's so many other examples where red tape is stopping us growing our economy. It wouldn't cost the government anything, but they need to have a clear approach to reducing this stuff. Every year we're layering on more bureaucracy, which just stops business happening. So get it sorted out, gang. Number 3 is I would focus on those businesses that are doing anywhere between $250,000 of revenue and 10 million of revenue. That's most of the people that watch my stuff. I think there's a huge opportunity here to find the next JCB, the next Cadbury's, the next Dyson. They are here in the United Kingdom economy, and we just don't focus on them enough. What UK government does very well is focus on the big banks and the companies that are in the FTSE 100 and 500. They get their time with government, but they used to be an SME business that over time have grown into a big business. So yes, let's have the corporate businesses. Yes, we want them. They're an essential part of our economy, but let's also focus on that SME that's ambitious, that wants to grow. It's very hard for them to get banking, funding, and all of that stuff that can get them to the next level. So I would create the British SME Business Bank. And this would be an incentive for banks to lend into those sectors rather than just look after the big corporates. And government back it. Government give guarantees and securities and stand in for banks, but banks do all the legwork to lend money to businesses. Now, they've done stuff like this before. In fact, bounce back loans and the Sybil's loan scheme in coronavirus was a good example of how easy, how quickly, and how effectively they can do this. And do you know what? Most Sybil's loans have not been knocked. Most people are due diligently paying them back. Yes, there's a few rogues out there, but what happened was banks got finance and cash to businesses very quickly so they can grow their business. What's happening is these SME businesses are going to the challenger banks. They're going to peer-to-peer lending, which is horrific rates of interest, when they're probably profitable enough just to go to a high street bank and get much cheaper financing. And if they've got cheaper financing, they're using their cash to employ more people, grow their business rather than just paying horrific rates of interest. That is a huge opportunity that we've got here. So we want to create the British Business SME Bank. So we've got the ones that are going over 10 million of revenue, that want to get venture capital money, private equity money, or they want to get from the British Business Bank. But what about those SMEs that are doing $250,000 to 10 million a year? They're the ones that I think have the biggest opportunity to grow the UK economy. Number 4, places to trade. Lots and lots of SME businesses that are in that $250,000 to 10 million pound mark need a 3, 4, 5,000 square foot unit to operate their business from, especially if they're making stuff. You would be shocked just how hard it is to get those buildings. They're like rocking horse poop, ladies and gentlemen. They just don't exist. I'm a landlord. I own lots of them. As soon as a tenant moves out, we've got a list of people that want to move into them. And I look to buy more and more all the time, but they're just not available. So we've got to come up with a plan, an incentive to get commercial property developers to build those stuff, or get local councils to build those stuff, because they create jobs and they help us make things. One of the big things that I have as a problem with the UK economy is very service-based led. And decades ago, we were very good at manufacturing stuff. And we have lots of people that are engineering minded and they want to make more stuff, but they just find it very difficult to find places that are affordable to trade from. Now, we could incentivize that through business rates as well. I'm going to come on to business rates later, but if you're an engineering business that's making stuff that's supporting other economies, I think you should be incentivized through your business rate scheme, but also local authorities owning commercial properties that allows people to trade that are really affordable, rather than monopoly landlords that are charging really high rents purely from a supply and demand point of view. So we need to find a way of growing a portfolio of properties here in the UK that are really good for people that want to do storage, distribution and make stuff that are up to 10,000 square foot, that 1,000 to 10,000 square foot of space. There's plenty of big buildings for distribution that are hugely expensive for the likes of Amazon, but I want buildings that SMEs can trade from that are affordable, and that's one of the ways that I'd grow the economy. Before we go on to the next point, I want to talk about my favourite habit, and that's the power of writing. Every Monday, I release the James Sinclair letter at 7 a.m. It's a letter that really goes through my thoughts of the previous week, things I might have struggled with and how I've overcome them. It's like pulling back the curtains into how my brain works. If you would like to get access to this letter that I release every single Monday at 7 a.m, you can. And it's free. There's a link in the video description, or you can sign up on my website, jamessinclair.net, and then click on the letter button and sign up for the letter. And I'll see you in your inbox, 7 a.m. every Monday to grow your business. Right, let's get back to the next point. Number 5 is employment tax breaks. Now, I alluded to this earlier, but if you are an employee and you want to go out and employ people, employers' national insurance pension costs are so expensive, it just deters the SME from employing someone. And here's the absolute facts of this. There's only 7,500 companies in the UK that employ more than 250 people. That's madness. And of those 7,500 people, some of those people will be people like me that I've got 1,200 staff. I've got multiple companies employing more than 250 people. So only a few thousand people are controlling most of the workforce. I don't think it's because people don't want to give it a go. They don't want to not employ people. It's the cost of employment, not the salary you pay, the taxes that you pay the government to employ someone. You're doing a really good thing for the government. You're employing people, giving people jobs, and then you are taxed for employing people through employers' national insurance and all the other gumph that goes with it. So we need to make it as pro-employment as possible so that the business owner and entrepreneur takes that risk from going from a solopreneur, a one-man band, into employing more people. So how can we do that? Let's incentivize employment so we've got more SMEs that take the risk to employ someone that then become not small businesses, but medium-sized businesses, and over time, big businesses, and as a result, we grow the UK economy. Number 6, I want to widen our skill set as a country. And I alluded to this earlier again, we're talking about we're a service-based economy. We're brilliant at financial services. We're brilliant at legal services. But actually, let's start making more stuff so we've got a diverse economy. Other countries around the world have done this. We should look at parts of our country where we've got free ports now, where you can get stuff in and out of the country more cost effectively. But let's go further on that. Let's incentivize manufacturing so that we've got a more broadened economy, so that if we do have a financial services problem in the future, another credit crunch, we can lean on our engineering capabilities. We want to have science and medicine and really have a cocktail of industries so we're a diverse economy. Now, people talk about this. Of course they want it. Governments, politicians, they talk about this, but it's the action. Like, we're doing everything we can to make sure that we've got financial services. But I want more of a broad, skilled economy. I think that will really benefit every other sector that operates. Number 7 is VAT, the killer of entrepreneurship. This turnover tax is the worst of the worst. And in some cases, it's so deeply unfair, it just stops people even growing the turnover of their business. They stop at VAT, especially in the service-based industry. Now, if I was in charge of the Exchequer, I would have different rates of VAT. For services, if you're going out to restaurants or you're going to have your hair cut or you're building in a service for building or a garden or something like that, I would have a lower rate of VAT and a higher rate of VAT if you buy products. So you go and buy a swanky new TV, you have a higher rate of VAT via the restaurant that brings in stuff that's all zero rated and it's just a complete cost to them. There's nothing they can offset. Let me explain that a little bit further. If you're a builder's merchant, you buy in a pallet of bricks for £1,000 plus VAT, and then you sell it for £1,200 plus VAT, you're claiming some VAT back in and then charging it, and there's some offsetting. If you're a restaurant, you're buying in loads of zero-rated food like tomatoes and vegetables, you're putting it on a plate, and then you're charging it out at 20%, and that's just coming off of the bill. And the thing is, You can't just charge more and more to your customers, because especially at the moment, your customers are more hard up. So you erode your margin just to stay in business and hope that in 5 or 10 years' time, things will get easier. That's how lots of people in hospitality and leisure work. And here's the thing, the government know this, because in coronavirus, guess what they did? They reduced VAT for hospitality and leisure businesses because they know they've just about survived forever, and they had to reduce the VAT to make sure that they carried on surviving, because this is a sector of employment that's really good, a sector of business that's really good for employing young people and driving communities in our areas. And other countries know this. You go to Ireland, they have a lower rate of VAT for the hospitality and leisure service-based businesses and a higher rate of VAT for products. Same with Spain, same with France. Why we just don't get it in the UK is absolutely beyond me. So yes, if you're a service-based business, I think you should have lower VAT, and if you're buying in products, a higher VAT, purely from the offsetting point of view. And I think you will find those hairdressers start to employ people, they start to take that commercial premises over, and you see those gardeners that do everything they can to keep their turnover just underneath the turnover threshold, because they don't want to leave 20% out to the government because that's all of their profit. They would go, do you know what? This is a bit fairer now. Let's go for it. Let's grow our business. Number 8, we've got to create a system for mentorship. And I thought very carefully how we can do this. Yeah, you guys have found me on YouTube, you might listen to my podcast. And I think what a lot of business owners do is they go, I'm struggling, I'll call my accountant. That's usually the first place they go for business advice. But really, you need to go to your accountant for tax advice. And my opinion is most accountants, not all accountants, are not entrepreneurially thinking, they're numbers thinking. So they're very risk adverse. And if you're growing entrepreneur, you want to take some risks. You see opportunity. That's what entrepreneurship means. The seeker of opportunity. Where could you go? Well, I actually think banks. Some of my best mentors and advisors over the years have been my bank managers. But banks really only put good bank managers in for businesses like mine that do over 5 million of revenue, and in some cases over 10 million of revenue before you get a really experienced bank manager. Now go back 10, 20, 30 years ago, the local bank manager would know loads about SME businesses. They would have lots of clients. They get really good training from the banks, and they would be like an advisor to the business. Yes, they would help finance the business, but they would also say, let's see your monthly management accounts. They would put rules and restrictions on if you want to borrow money. They would help you with connections with other businesses in the area. They were a really good community service. And banks on the whole have got rid of this brilliant old-fashioned bank manager. And I think we should be bringing that back. But the thing is, banks look at it and go, well, actually, how can we afford this for an SME business? I see how we can afford it for a business doing 5 million plus of revenue, but how can we afford it for the small business? Now, I think government should team up with the high street banks and bring back the bank managers and incentivize the bank to bring them back in. Maybe they take the security on loans. Maybe they do a tax break, and you get loads of business hubs in banks, locally, in communities to help coach business owners to be more successful. Did you know about this? Did you know about export finance? Did you know about marketing? Can you create local seminars in your local communities that are led by the bank to help grow our economies? Now, you do have, this was a thing that happened 20, 30 years ago, but you also have community banks around the world that do similar stuff to this. And I really think that would be a really smart thing to do here in the UK. But for it to work long term, you need business banking, so the high street bank, and the UK government to work tandem, hand in hand, so it becomes a long-term thing, because you won't get immediate results in 3 to 6 months. You've got to think in 10-year chunks. But that's where entrepreneurs are really good, right? That's what makes an entrepreneur, is they can think, yeah, in 10 years time, our business is going to look like this. Whereas actually big business and government are so short-term thinking. And actually that's one of the big points of this video. How can you get government to think in bigger chunks? You know, when you take a mortgage out on your house and you go, well, look, when I retire, my house is all going to be paid off and I've got a nice little pension pot. Actually, entrepreneurs and business owners think like that. We'll invest in that, and in 3, 4, 5 years' time, we'll get a good return. Actually, big business and government are thinking in 90, 100-day chunks. And actually, sometimes that isn't long enough to get good results. So I do think local banks and government creating a community business mentorship scheme with banks, because that's where business owners are are always trading with their banks. They trust their bank, and they think, oh yeah, this is good. Actually, I could go and talk to my bank manager, get some help, get some advice. And those bank managers be lodged into local government. Those bank managers be logged in with local accountants, understand a bit about legal services to help their customers to want to grow the UK economy. Number 10 is local government having a real incentive to grow the businesses where they operate out of. Now, again, here's a big problem. Local government have got a big general election once every 4 or 5 years, then they've got the local elections. So there's always a moving guard, and businesses are usually much more constant. But we do need to come up with a way for business and government locally to have a more constant approach. And if you look at local governments, they give big contracts out to these massive, big FTSE 100, 500 companies, maybe for their FM, for their legal services, whatever it is. How can we incentivize them to use local more, to drive local economies, so that those local businesses have a chance of becoming medium-sized businesses and then one day big businesses? And if you look at the UK government as a whole, the UK economy as a whole, how did we get Dyson? How did we get JCB? How did we get Cadbury's? How did we get some of these brilliant, well-known brands? Well, they all were starters before they were masters. And I want to help those that have done the first initial jump into entrepreneurship. They've taken some risk. They've employed some people. They've got 4 or 5 staff and they want to go to the next level, but they find it very difficult to finance it. They find it very difficult to get the advice and go to the right people. But actually, I think we do have the institutions in place, but just not using them effectively enough to grow our business, to grow our company, to grow our country. You see where it all works hand in hand. And the sad thing is, I think years ago, we did used to have that stuff. I think we need to bring a bit back of the old school into the new school to grow our country. Now, hopefully, when you've listened to me go through these points, I haven't actually gone through anything that I think is too sexy. I haven't said slash taxes. Yeah, I want us to be as competitive as possible as a country, but I think I've come up with really good common sense things that go alongside that stuff, like the planning reform. Let's get that done. Let's get stuff being built. Let's get businesses open, which is going to bring in more tax receipts, which is going to grow our economy. We have a real opportunity in this country to be the biggest economy in Europe. I absolutely believe that. We need to be making more stuff. We need the right tax incentives that guarantee growth, or people are just leaving. I mean, I know people now that are on good salaries, not great salaries. They're not people that can say they're millionaires and billionaires, but people that are on good salaries that are leaving this country and they're going to other countries in Portugal, in the UAE, just because they're fed up of paying too much tax. We've got to strike a balance. We've got to strike a balance. We've got to look after the people at the bottom of the pyramid, and those at the top of the pyramid need to be incentivized to stay. And that is the balancing act that a government needs to make. But at the moment, I do think it's unfair and unreasonable on the people that are earning just okay. And that worries me, because I'm seeing them every single week leave. When you lose someone that's on, say, £100,000 or £150,000, that's paying so much in and driving our economy, and they're going to live in another country, that really makes me sad, because they feel that they're getting a bad deal. So we've got to work on that. That's something that really needs serious thought and attention. And people need to be talking about it. People need to be talking about it, because otherwise they're just going to leave. We'll look in 10, 20 years' time and we won't be able to stay at the top of the G7. We won't be the 7th biggest economy or the 6th biggest economy. We become the 10th and the 11th and the 12th. And I think we've got a real opportunity to become the biggest economy in Europe. So we need the right tax incentive. We need to grow our economy and be very entrepreneurial thinking and opening our arms and saying, this is a country where the SME can grow. This is a country where we want small businesses and we want wealth creation and we want to incentivize hard work. That's my thoughts. Hope you like this video. Let me know what you would do in the comments. I can't wait to read them.